Everybody, welcome back. This is Bruce of the Epic Experiment. We're back another week, another deck tech. This week, I got something exciting for you guys. Now, if you've noticed on the channel, I don't play a lot of monocolored decks, but boy, oh boy, did I want to build this one. We got some mono red goodness with Clive, Ifrit's Dominant. So 4 red for a legendary creature, Human Noble Warrior. It's a 5/5. And when Clive enters, you may discard your hand, then draw cards equal to your devotion to red. Ooh, yes, that's all the good words. And then 4 red, tap, exile Clive, then return it to the battlefield, transformed in your control. Activate that only as a sorcery. On the back, we have Ifrit, Warden of Inferno. So it's a 9/9 legendary creature enchantment, and it's a Saga Demon. And then Ifrit fights up to 1 target creature. So 9/9 probably fights something and kills it. And then chapters 2 and 3 are add 4 red. If Ifrit has 3 or more lore counters on it, exile, then return it to the battlefield. So it flips back into Clive. So this is a fun deck. I really wanted to build Clive because I love the idea of a big red devotion heavy deck. And so that's what I put together here, a devotion heavy deck that really leans into this idea of putting a lot of permanents on red pips on the board and drawing a dump load of cards and using that to fuel your strategy to win. All right, so let's start. Clive is 6 mana. It's pretty expensive. How are we going to cast our Clive? Well, we got a bunch of things over here that are going to help us get there. Let's start with everybody's favorite. We have a Sol Ring. Everyone likes it. I like that particular art for it too. So Sol Ring. We have a Mind Stone. Mind Stone is another classic. It goes right along with all of our other friends. We have a Glittering Stockpile. So this one I like because of the fact it provides a red mana pip to be committed to Clive's devotion. So I really like this. And then you can tap it to put a counter on it. And then you remove all the counters to make a whole bunch of mana. Seems pretty good to me. Then we have a Hedron Archive. Now, I have routinely hated this card, but this time I want to be able to ensure I can draw enough cards to get to fuel my deck. My biggest concern with the mono red deck is I'm going to have a hard time drawing cards because red has typically struggled with it. However, you'll see I think I've managed to equip it pretty well. So Hedron Archive, tap for 2 mana, or tap 2 and tap it, sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. All right. Then we have some other interesting inclusions. We have a Zookeeper Makin. So 1 in a red for a 1/3, tap to add a red, and then 6 in a red, target creature you control gets +4/+0 until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. I can't imagine I'm ever actually activating this, but the fact that you now have a red mana dork, yes please. Speaking of red mana dorks, here's another one. Sunset Strike Master. This is a 1 in a red for a 3/1, tap to add a red. 2 in a red, tap, sacrifice this creature. It deals 6 damage to target creature with flying. This is just a red mana dork again. So we've had 2 back-to-back sets now, or 2 sets out of 3 that have had mana dorks in red. We have a Goldlust Triad. So 4 in a red for a 4/3 creature dragon with flying and myriad. So whenever you attack, it also makes a copy for each other opponent. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. So there's a way for you to potentially make a bunch of mana. And then last but not least, we have a Fire Crystal, which doesn't really make the mana so much as it just makes your red spells cost 1 less. But it gives your creatures haste, which you're going to see is a pretty important feature of this deck, particularly when you want to get Clive down, or better yet, you want to get Ifrit down. And then 4 red, tap it, create a token as a copy of target creature you control, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Okay, cool. That seems like fun. All right, so haste is big. We want haste because the creatures we have in the deck tend to be kind of chonky, and they really come in best when they have haste. So what other haste enablers do we have? Well, we have Rising of the Day. So this is an excellent card. 2 in a red. Creatures you control have haste. Legendary creatures you control get +1/+0. We have Enduring Courage, one of my favorite ways. 2 red for a 3/3. So it's a Dog Glimmer. Whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. When Enduring Courage dies, if it was a creature returned to the battlefield under its owner's control, it's an enchantment. So it has an Ogre Battle Driver effect, and then when it dies, it just straight comes back as an enchantment. And then we have Goro Goro, Disciple of Ryusei. So 4 in a red for a 2/2. Sorry, 1 in a red for a 2/2. Red, creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. And 3 red, create a 5/5 red dragon spirit creature token with flying. Activate only if you control an attacking modified creature. I don't know if I have any modified creatures in here, but boy oh boy, giving your things haste seems good. All right, so what am I hasting out? Let's talk about some of the. Let's talk about how we're going to dig cards and find what we're going to haste out, because I think that's the better choice. All right. I'm actually finding quite a bit of draw with this particular configuration, but it's different than like blue or black or even green, where you're going to put them in your hand. You end up having to discard things. So let's talk about it. So we have Faithless Looting is a great example. So single red, draw 2, discard 2. And then you can flash it back for 2 in a red. So this is sort of what you're going to get with red effects. You're going to be able to dig and look and find things in your deck, but you have to discard stuff too. So it's not a perfect solution, but it gives you some pretty wicked velocity to burn through your deck. So we have Faithless Looting. We have a Reckless Impulse. 1 in a red, exile the top 2 cards. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. We have Grab the Prize. 1 in a red. As additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card. Draw 2. If you discarded a card that wasn't a land, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. We have Demand Answers. 1 in a red. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. We have a Cathartic Reunion. 1 in a red. As additional cost to cast Cathartic Reunion, discard 2 cards. Draw 3. We have Thrill of Possibility. 1 in a red. Instant, as an additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card. Draw 2. You may notice that right now, so if I hit all of those, I'm burning through my deck. All right, we have a Hearth Elemental. So this is 5 in a red for a 4/5, but it's got an adventure. So you can play Stroke of Genius for 1 in a red. As a sorcery, discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. This is routinely like, I have no cards in hand left. I'm casting the adventure side and just getting 2 cards. So seems good to me. We have a Mishra, Excavating Prodigy. 2 in a red, 2/1 with haste. It is a legendary human artificer. 1 in a tap, discard a card, draw a card. Whenever you discard 1 or more artifact cards, add red. This ability triggers only once each turn. So you can make a little bit of extra mana with that, but it's mostly for the rummage. We have a Fear of Missing Out. So 1 in a red. Whenever Fear of Missing Out enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw a card. A Delirium. Whenever Fear of Missing Out attacks for the first time each turn, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, untap target creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Seems good to me. We have a Chandra, Dressed to Kill. So 1 red. For a 3 loyalty Planeswalker Chandra. +1, add red. Chandra deals 1 damage to up to 1 target player or Planeswalker. Sure, make mana, deal damage, all things that red wants to do. Or +1, exile the top card of your library. If it's red, you may cast it this turn. And -7, exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast red spells from among them this turn. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a red spell, this emblem deals X damage to any target, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Believe it or not, it's the mana devotion to it is good. The +1, both +1s are good, and if you can get the -7, that's pretty potent too. We have Count on Luck. So red. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. I like this because it gives me the impulse draw at the beginning of my upkeep, but also contributes 3 red pips towards Clive's devotion. So that's really big too. We have a Professional Facebreaker. So 2 in a red, Human Warrior with 2/3 with Menace. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. Okay, ramp. Good. Sacrifice a treasure, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. You know what? It's nice to have the ability. It sort of figures in both the ramp portion and the card advantage a little bit. So fits right in. Plays really nicely with the deck. Then we have Inti, Seneschal of the Sun. 1 in a red for a 2/2. Whenever you attack, you may discard a card. When you do, put a +1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until end of turn. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until your next end step. So if this is sitting on the battlefield and you start casting some of those Thrill of Possibilities and Grab the Prize effects, you could legitimately exile a bunch of cards and keep, and train through a bunch of cards in real short order. Then we have a Tectonic Reformation. 1 and a red for an enchantment. Each land card in your hand has red cycling. And this card alone can also cycle for 2 colorless mana. So this can turn any extra lands that you happen to have into cycling cards, just so you can discard them and keep drawing, hopefully, into more gas. And then we have one of my favorite cards, Brass's Tunnel Grinder. So 2 and a red, legendary artifact. When Brass's Tunnel Grinder enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards plus 1. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a board counter. Then if there are 3 or more board counters on it, remove those counters and transform it. And it turns into a land. Turns into Tecutlan, the Searing Rift. And so taps for a red. Whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by Tecutlan, the Searing Rift, discover X, where X is the spell's mana value. I've never actually managed to transform it, but it's something I definitely want to do. All right, so that's quite a number of ways to draw you some cards that people may not have thought about in red, giving you some pretty good advantage. All right, let's talk about how we're going to keep our opponents off balance and remove the things that are a problem. All right, this is one of my favorite cards, Cast into the Fire. 1 and a red, Cast into the Fire does 1 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures. I mean, I suppose it's cute. It makes it hard for, elves and small creatures to survive. But this is really here because exile target artifact is the next mode. So this is going to deal with all sorts of problematic artifacts really, really nicely. And it's a common. It's really, really good. Vandal Blast is another one. So this is just classic 1 to destroy 1 artifact, or you can overload it for 5 to destroy all other artifacts that you don't control. Yes, please. We have an Abrade. So this is like Cast into the Fire is like twin. So this deals 3 damage to target creature or destroy target artifact. Those cards, I think, are actually really good inclusions in most decks. We have an Unholy Heat. So because of all the things you're discarding, Unholy Heat isn't going to be 2 damage. It's going to have the Delirium Clause where it's going to deal 6. Chances are 1 mana for 6 damage seems pretty good to me. You're probably going to get there. Bone Crusher Giant is another one. So 2 and a red for 4/3. Has an adventure where it deals 2 damage to any target, and then it is a 4/3 creature that if they want to target it, they have to do 2 damage. We have Chandra's Ignition. So we have a bunch of big fat creatures. Chandra's Ignition is a classic card. So 3 red, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. All right, super handy card. Not always the first thing you're going to reach for, but tasty. Koth, Fire Resistance. 2 red. So it's a 4 loyalty Planeswalker Koth. And then so +2, search your library for a basic mountain. Great. Put it in your hand and shuffle. -3, Koth, Fire Resistance deals damage equal to the number of mountains you control. Well, considering the deck is mono red, you're going to have lots of mountains. You're killing things. -7, you get an emblem with whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, this emblem deals 4 damage to any target. So I'm usually using this for either the +2 or the -3. And probably starting with the -3, kill a thing, and then see if I can draw a mountain. Krenko, Buzz Crusher. So 2 red for a 4 flying trample insect thopter. When Krenko's Bud Crusher enters the battlefield, for each player, destroy up to 1 non-basic land that player controls. For each land destroyed this way, its controller may search the library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This is to deal with those problematic lands that you just know, like the Cabal Coffers, or the Maze of Ith, or just stuff. All right, it's just a handy little thing to have. There's the same reason that in the deck I also run a Field of Ruin. I don't run a lot of land destruction, but there is a little bit in here to keep people honest. Then we have 2 cards that pretty much play the same way. We have Overlord of the Boiler Bilges and Inferno Titan. So these both have an end of the battlefield trigger and an attack trigger. That deals damage and probably removes most things on the board. So Inferno Titan, it enters play, it deals 3 damage. Then when it attacks, and you can choose to divvy the damage up between 1, 2, or 3 targets. So you could potentially wipe out a whole bunch of small tokens or something. The Boiler Bilges, instead of being 3, is 4 when it enters and when it attacks. So very similar. All right. And then last but not least, we have one of my favorite cards. We have Chainsaw, 1 and a red. When Chainsaw enters, it deals 3 damage to up to 1 target creature. Whenever 1 or more creatures die, put a rev counter on Chainsaw. Equipped creature gets +X+O, where X is the number of rev counters on Chainsaw. Okay, let's just imagine this, because in the last 2 games I've played this deck, Chainsaw has managed to get up to 20 counters on it. So it's potentially a very huge, huge swing of damage. All right. Then I also have a whole bunch of things that grant haste. So when I play a creature, slap this on, now I'm surprising my opponent for a very large sum of damage. I think this card is underrated and people are sleeping on it. This thing is the sort of thing that's just going to win people games. Even better if you put something on like with Death Touch or something with First Strike or something else. Like there's a whole bunch of ways to really turn this into a really terrifying card. All right, let's talk about some other ways that I'm going to mess up with people's lands. So we're playing mono red. Blood Moon is almost a given when you're playing mono red because you're not impacted by it. This other one though is super interesting. So this is Burning Earth, 3 and a red for enchantment. Whenever a player taps a non-basic land for mana, Burning Earth deals 1 damage to that player. In Commander, there's an awful lot of non-basic lands being played. This thing is going to keep your opponents really, really honest because they have to really think about what they're going to tap for their mana and whether or not they want to take the damage or not. All right? Now, let's talk about that damage because there's lots of damage to be flung around with this guy. So we have a Dictate of the Twin Gods. So 3 red, flash. If a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player. This is you got to be careful with this one because you could very easily kill yourself with this, but this is a great way to make sure that if you're dealing damage, you get to punch it through and deal a whole bundle of it. Torbrand, 1 red for a 2/4 legendary creature, Dwarf Noble. If a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2. So this is great for our devotion, but it also deals a whole heap of damage humongously. All right. Defiler of Instinct, 2 red for a 4/4 Phyrexian Kavu. First strike, as an additional cost to cast red permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost 1 red less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of red mana you pay. Whenever you cast a red permanent spell, Defiler of Instinct deals 1 damage to any target. So with the Torbrand and the Dictate, that's very quickly piling up. We have Gratuitous Violence, 2 red for an enchantment. If a creature you control would deal damage to a creature or player, it deals double that damage to that creature or player instead. So another Dictate of the Twin Gods effect. Angrath's Marauders, 5 red for a human pirate, 4/4. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to permanent or player. You see a trend here. We're going to deal a whole bunch of damage in a hurry. We have a Seismic Assault. So red, great for our devotion, but it also has the following clause. Discard a land card, Seismic Assault deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So you could very easily be dealing heaps of damage with that. And then we have Mechanized Warfare, 2 red. If a red or artifact source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 1 instead. We're going to lay a hurting on our opponents real quick with some of those cards. So it doesn't take all of them. It takes maybe 1 or 2, and your opponents are sitting up and taking notice. All right, let's talk about how we're going to protect our board. Make sure we don't get wrecked by all that fancy removal. So we've given us some really good effects to help protect ourselves. So we have Bolt Bend, 3 and a red, instant. This spell costs 3 less if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. My commander does, and it meets those criteria, so that's pretty good. Change the target spell or ability with a single target. So if they try to play Path to Exile, you can just redirect it, send it somewhere else. Untimely Malfunction, 1 and a red. Choose 1, it's an instant. Destroy target artifact. Change the target of target spell or ability with a single target, or 1 or 2 target creatures can't block this turn. Well, modes 1 and 2 are both really, really excellent, and so this card is a great inclusion in your list. And then you have Flare of Duplication, so 1 red. You may sacrifice a non-red creature rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Okay, then we have some value pieces. So we've talked about all sorts of things to help us generate a heap of mana, or cards, or protect, or damage. We have a Krenko Mob Boss. So Krenko Mob Boss, 2 red. Put a 1/1 red goblin creature token on the battlefield where X number of goblins you control. This is just an army in a can. This is not great, but you're going to have haste. You're going to be able to tap it, put extra goblins into play. And it's just a really useful way to generate a lot of bodies that you can then put to work doing stuff for you, whether it's blocking or not. Itali, Primal Storm, 2 red red. Whenever Itali Primal Storm attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana cost. All right, super good. Everyone knows that one, and they know it's a problem. Goblin Chain Whirler. So red, red, red for a 3/3 for a strike. When Goblin Chain Whirler enters the battlefield, it does 1 damage to each opponent and each creature or planeswalker they control. This is here for your red devotion. Pump that up high. We have Razorkin Needlehead. Red, red for a 2/2. Needlekin has first strike during your turn. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Razorkin Needlehead deals 1 damage to them. So it helps punish draws, and then again, deals quite a bit of damage. Well, since we're discarding a whole lot of cards, a Bag of Holding seems like a really good inclusion. So whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. So 2 on a tap, draw a card, then discard a card. 4 on a tap, discard Bag of Holding, return all cards exiled with Bag of Holding to their owner's hands. So you're going to discard things with all those discard effects, but you're not going to lose access to them permanently unless this is removed. It happens sometimes, but it's a pretty good failsafe. We also have a Monument to Endurance. So 3 for an artifact. Whenever you discard a card, choose one that hasn't been chosen before. So draw a card, create a treasure token, or each opponent loses 3 life. Usually I'm starting by making the treasure because it plays really well with Jax's, but also ramps. Then I'm drawing a card, and then finally my opponents can lose some life. We have a Sefer Almazi. So 3 in a red for a 3/4 legendary creature, Human Knight. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike until end of turn. And then Fire Cross. Whenever Sefer Almazi deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell you put into your graveyard, exile it instead. This is really mostly just to give something double strike, like, I don't know, an Itali or a Clive or something else. A Boiler, Overlords, things like that. Power Balance, red, red. Enchantment. This is really good for our devotion. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost if the 2 spells have the same mana value. It's a bit of a shot in the dark, but it's something I think is kind of fun to try. Triple Triad. So 3 red, red, red. Enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles the top card of their library. Until end of turn, you may play the card you own exiled this way, and each other card exiled this way with lesser mana value than it, without paying their mana costs. So you could get a lot of value out of this card. It's also got great devotion for your playing this. I've never resolved yet. I'd like to try that out before too long. You have a Gear per Ori. So 4 for an artifact. Each player may play an additional land on each of his or her turns. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. Look, my biggest fear is that I'm going to be having to discard down and have nothing left in my hand or very little. So this would at least give me the opportunity to recoup. And played in the mid to late game, if your opponents don't have tons of lands, it's probably not the end of the world. All right, next we have Detective's Phoenix. So 2 in a red for 2/2 enchantment creature Phoenix with Bestow for a single red, collect evidence 6. Flying, haste. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has flying and haste. You may cast Detective's Phoenix from your graveyard using its Bestow ability. I'm pitching loads of things to my graveyard. So Detective's Phoenix is going to have lots of fodder to collect 6 for and then come back. And then we have Plarg and Nasari. So 3 red, red for a 5/4 legendary creature, Orc Ifrit. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. An opponent chooses a non-land card exiled this way. You may cast up to 2 spells from among the other cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. This seems like a fun way to get steal value off the top of your deck, similar in vein to Itali. Then we have a couple of other holdouts here. We've got my 2 Nehebs. Neheb Dreadhorde Champion and Neheb the Eternal. Neheb the Eternal is the one I think you really got to look out for. So 3 red, red, 4/6 with a flick 3. It's a zombie Minotaur Warrior. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add red for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. So you notice all the ways we're going to make them lose life. This might be a pretty cool way to make a bunch of mana. And then Neheb Dreadhorde Champion, 2 red, red. Again, good for our devotion. 5/4, trample. Whenever Neheb Dreadhorde Champion deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you may discard any number of cards. If you do, draw that many cards and add that much red mana. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So this one's a little bit trickier because you got to deal combat damage, but both of them are pretty cool cards and pretty good payoffs in this deck. Last but not least, we have these two cards. I want to talk to them because these are pretty cracked cards in this deck. So we have a Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. This is pretty much self-explanatory. So taps were colorless, or 2 and a tap, choose a color. Add to your mana pool an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color. So we're going to do devotion to red. We're going to tap, and Nykthos is going to make a lot of mana. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. This Matsalantli, the Great Door, this is a very different type of card. So tap, draw a card, then discard a card. 4, tap, discard Matsalantli, the Great Door. Activate only if there are 4 or more permanent types among cards in your graveyard. Well, again, you're discarding lots of things into your graveyard. You're probably going to be able to get away with flipping this. But if you can flip this thing is like unheralded. All right? So it has Fathomless Descent. Tap, add X mana of any one color, in this case red, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. So those two ways are going to generate a lot of mana to make sure you power through your deck. All right, this deck is kind of fun. There's still a few pieces that I think I want to pick up for it, but you're going to deal a lot of damage, but it's a different type of red burn strategy. It's big red. It is playing lots of things to the board. You have to be aggressive about what you're pitching to your graveyard and not worry about it, because there's lots of good things in the deck. I've played it now a couple of times and it's played really nicely. It's a lot of fun. This is a good bracket 3 deck. I think there's a little too much juice here for a bracket 2 against a precon. You could play it there. I don't think it'd be out of place, but I think probably safest at a bracket 3 where people are going to be able to see what you're leaning into with some of your synergies. There's no game changers in this list, and the list itself is reasonably affordable. Yeah, check the list in the notes down below so you can see for yourself. Maybe you want to build Clive Ifrit's Dominant yourself. If you like this sort of content, please like and subscribe. Every little bit helps. We're trying to get to 100 subscriptions by the end of September now. Really would love to get people on board. If we get to 100, maybe we do something, maybe give away a deck or something spicy like that. So help me out, and help me out here on the channel. Like and subscribe. If you want to hear more of our content, you can hear our podcast each and every week. The link is going to be in the notes down below too, so you can check it out. All right, so that's what we got for Clive Ifrit's Dominant. This is a fun one, a little bit of a longer one, but thanks very much, everybody. You have a good one, and this is Bruce the Epic Experiment signing off. Catch you next time.